I'm doing my bit.
Yeah, I can do that. Not
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna let them in right now. I'll tell them that it'll start in a couple of minutes. And Sophie, you can start, I don't know, 11:02 or something like that, okay? Hello, thank you for joining. We'll be starting in a couple of minutes.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. We're just going to hang on a couple of minutes for a few other people to join and then we will get started. We've had a really excellent turnout for the presentation, so we're really excited to have so many of you here and so many people waiting to catch up online. So yeah, very happy to have you all here and thanks for being here on time. We will hang on a couple of minutes just to make sure we've got enough people in the room before we get started properly. There's still a few more people trickling in, so we'll just hang on a little bit longer before we get started, or I get started with the introduction section of the presentation. It's beautiful weather here in London, so hopefully everybody else has got nice weather as well, and if not, you've had some nice weather on the lead up to today. We will, again, just still some more people trickling in. We'll just give it a few, maybe 30 more seconds, and then I will make a start. And hopefully everyone can catch up later if they miss any sections of the presentation. It will be available later and also with translation, so that should be really useful for some people. Okay, I think we'll start now. Again, thank you so much to everyone for being here this evening or whatever time of day it is where you are. I'm really pleased to be here. My name is Sophie Medlin. I am a consultant dietitian here in the UK. I run a company called City Dietitians, and I'm also the chair for the British Dietetic Association for London. And it's my pleasure to be able to introduce this presentation this evening, which is going to be by Dr. Swati Kalgaonkar, which I'm very lucky to have her here. If we could move on to the next slide. I'm not controlling my own section of this presentation, which is always slightly tricky, but if we could move on to the next slide, please. Just to give you an idea about what's going to happen, I'm going to run the introduction section of the presentation. I will cover some webinar guidelines just to give you an idea about what to expect. We will then be joined by Swati, who will give her full presentation, which will cover almonds, the new research frontiers for healthier lifestyle, which is really exciting. At the end, there'll be a Q&A session. The Q&A session will be anonymous, you'll be pleased to know, so you don't fear, it won't be recorded, sorry. So feel free to ask anything that you want to, and we will make sure that your questions are answered. Just some guidelines on the presentation this evening, just to give you an idea. We will keep you all muted throughout the presentation and throughout the Q&A. If anytime you've got a technical issue, please access the help screens at the top of your attendee control panel. If you want to ask any questions as you go along, please type them into the chat box. We'll be answering them at the end of the presentation, time permitting. And obviously we will also try to group them together a little bit so that we're not answering the same thing. But please do put your questions in the boxes and we will get back to as many of them as we can. Again, we will be recording the session. The session is already being recorded. It will be available in 5 days' time for self-study, but the Q&A won't be recorded. Later on, closed caption videos in French and German and Italian will accompany the slides in order to aid your reviewing of the presentation. So hopefully that'll be really useful for some people and perhaps worth then sharing it with your friends in other countries so that they can also get an update. As we go through, please do follow us, tweet us wherever you can. The company is very pleased to be able to share lots of really exciting information on social media that may be really useful to lots of you. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to cover, we're going to give you a reminder, hopefully, of almonds and their unique nutrient package. Almonds are one of my favourite foods. I've got some on my desk right now, so hopefully that's the same for lots of you. We'll give you a background on the research programme at the Almond Board. We're going to talk about skin health in this presentation. We're also going to cover heart health, which is really integral to almonds. We're going to talk about weight management. And we're also going to talk about some of the cutting edge and future research that almonds are presenting us with currently, which is really exciting. Following this session, you will receive our state-of-the-art science guide. So that's really exciting. So you'll get an update on everything and that will be for you to download and print if you want to, and a one-page summary of the studies presented today. What we really want to put across here is that we don't want you to be taking notes. We don't want you to be feeling like you've got to be scribbling everything down. We will make sure that after the presentation, you've got all the information that will be useful to you in a really nice presentation pack so that you can keep that and share it with your colleagues if you choose to. So to get us started, we are going to do a poll. So what I would like you to do is open your chat function, and in there a poll will appear. What's really important here is that you scroll down so that you can see all of the possible answers. So what we are starting with is, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, how would you rate your knowledge about almond research studies? So we'll see these as the votes come in. So again, open your chat function and then scroll down to be able to answer. It would be really great. We'll give you a little bit more time. We've got 8 responses so far out of 45, so we've got a little bit of a way to go. Maybe some of you are just having a think. Perhaps some of you are doing the cooking while you are watching the presentation or doing something else, so we'll forgive you if you don't all answer, but it'd be great to get a bit more of a response from everybody. It's updating live. So at the moment, it's looking like most people are ranking themselves as a 3. So somewhere in the middle, which is a really good way of hedging your bets, right? And saying that you know some things, but perhaps not as much as you would like to. And I guess that's why you're all here. So that is all good. Nobody's super confident at the moment. And just a few of you feeling really underconfident with your knowledge. But don't worry at all, because we will be taking the time to update you this afternoon or whatever time it is where you are. So let's move on from that. I just want to remind you all, as a bit of background, because we're not going to go into this too much, about the incredible nutritional benefits of almonds. So sometimes we can, so as a dietitian, I often think of almonds as being a high protein snack. I think of them as being something that's really helpful for satiety, so keeping people full between meals, and those sorts of things. And obviously we know about the general benefits. I think about fibre a lot as a gut health dietitian, but there are loads of other health benefits to almonds that are really important to mention. So protein being one that the general public find important, and fibre, also those amazing monounsaturated fats, which are so good for us, vitamin E, magnesium, also things like phosphorus, potassium, calcium, things that are perhaps a little bit more difficult to get in the general diet when we don't add nuts in. So they're a really great source of lots of important nutrients in our diet, and again, such a healthy and useful snack to have between meals in order to sort of maintain satiety, but also top up those nutrient levels. So yeah, that's one of the big reasons why they're so useful. And just so that you're all aware, almost all of the global the countries globally who do dietary recommendations tell us to increase nuts in our diet or to have nuts in our diet, which is really great to see. So Canada, we're saying daily. In the UK, we're saying some daily. Ireland saying 2 servings of nuts a day, which is one of the highest. We've got China saying 25 to 30 grams of nuts and soy. Lots of countries saying increase in general, some saying 30 grams a day. But just as a reminder of how important nuts are and how much more they're being recognised as an important part of our daily diet at that kind of governmental level. Oh, so now, with great pleasure, I am going to hand over to Swati Kalgaonkar. Swati is the Associate Director of Nutrition Research Programme and has extensive nutrition clinical research experience. Swati's primary focus is on the oversight of Almond Board California's contracted nutrition research, public policy analysis and synthesis, and information dissemination in support of the almond industry's global strategies. Additional priorities include identifying current research and future strategic needs for almond nutrition research, liaising with researchers, analysing and interpreting results, writing for scientific and review articles, position papers, and substantiation of documents for US DA and or FDA, coordinating the Nutrition Research Committee and administering its budget. Swati also travels extensively to represent the Almond Board at the US and international nutrition conferences. So without further ado, Swati, I will hand over to you and I will look forward to joining everyone later for the Q&A section of the presentation.
Thank you, Sophie, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to share the health benefits of almond consumption with everyone on this webinar today, and to talk a little bit about the cutting edge research and the new frontiers in terms of almond research. So just to kind of start us out, I would like to talk a little bit about the investment that the almond industry has made into almond research. We've really spent nearly a quarter of a century on almond nutrition research and invested a little over $30 million US, which has funded over 130 projects, and that has resulted in approximately 200 publications. We do our research collaborations with some of the most prestigious institutes and researchers across the world, and these are just highlights of some of the universities that we work with in North America, Europe, India, Australia, and of course, New Zealand. This here is just a quick overview of the research program timeline. And as you can see, one of the first almond studies was actually conducted in 1992, which was actually a little before the program inception, which happened in 1995. And since then, we've actually started not only in the area of heart health, but also invested in almond research, looking at weight management, looking at cognition, diabetes, satiety, gut health, healthy lifestyle, and more areas that I will be talking to you about as we go through the presentation. In fact, one of the most exciting areas, although it's one of the most current, that I would really love to talk about is almonds and skin health. So why don't we dive in with this really exciting area of research? So first and foremost, I'd like to introduce you to a study that we did looking at almonds and how they may impact wrinkle and skin pigmentation. So this particular study was actually done in Fitzpatrick skin type 1 and 2. So as most of you may be already aware, there are several different skin types. And so as you can see, the Fitzpatrick skin type scale here, the skin types range from type 1 to type 6. This particular study was done in types 1 and 2, which are skin types that do tend to burn easily on sun exposure. And so that is really what causes the fine lines and wrinkles. Now, the study design is laid out here. As you can see, there was a little bit of a washout at the very beginning for all the subjects to make sure that they were all at the same place at baseline, and they were then randomized into either an almond arm, almond intervention arm, or a control intervention arm, and then they followed that intervention for a period of 24 weeks. And in these 24 weeks, they either consumed almonds that were supplied at 20% of their total daily energy intake, or nut-free calorie-matched snacks. Now, the reason to provide almonds at 20% of daily energy intake is because that's typically the snack intake percentage coming from calories on our daily basis. And so that's where it was matched. And since the study was done in the US, this really was representative of the snack intake in US. So these were 49 postmenopausal women. They were between the ages of 47 and 84 years, and they completed this 24-week study. So then looking at results from the wrinkle part of the study, really what the study showed is that week 8 didn't necessarily show a significant difference between the almond arm and the control arm. And in this graph here, as you can tell, we're looking at wrinkle severity. And then the lighter, the yellow arm or the yellow bars are almond bars, and the orange bars are representative of the control treatment. So at week 8, we don't see any difference between the two bars, but as time goes on, by week 16 rather, so midway through or 2/3 of the way through the study, we're now beginning to see that there is actually a decrease that can be observed in wrinkle severity in the almond intervention arm. And this study, the beauty of the study is this is not almond topical treatment. So we're not applying almond on the skin. This is really almond consumption. So the subjects are actually eating the almonds, and the benefit of consuming the almonds is coming through the skin. So it's really benefit from the inside out, literally. And so we're looking at significantly reduced wrinkle severity at week 16 in the almond arm. And as long as the subjects continued to be compliant and to consume the almond amount that was given to them on a daily basis, then they continued to show that skin wrinkle severity, reduced skin wrinkle severity benefit all the way up to week 24, which is the time period to which the study was carried out. So amazing study results in terms of skin wrinkles. We see a very similar pattern in this particular chart. We're looking at almonds in the blue bar and control again in orange. And so again, similar to what the results show for wrinkle severity, this is pigmentation intensity. And so when we talk about pigmentation intensity, we're talking about uneven skin tone. There might be areas of skin that might be darker, have a darker pigmentation than others, and that leads to an uneven skin tone. And so really the idea with almond consumption was to ensure that we were able to really even out that skin tone. So at week 8, we don't really see that pigmentation intensity be impacted by either the almond or the control treatment. But at week 16, we begin to see a change, and we see a significant reduction in pigmentation intensity in the almond arm. And then again, because the subjects continue to be compliant all the way up to week 24, we see that the benefit also persists all the way up to week 24. So here's a little bit of how the study was actually conducted. They used really high resolution cameras to take very high resolution pictures of the close-up of the subjects' faces. So in conclusion, as part of the study, almond supplementation significantly reduced the appearance of wrinkle severity by 16%. And that's not something to scoff at when we're looking at or talking about a whole food consumption. This is not application of retinol. This is not application of hydroquinone. This is not something synthetic or something that might damage your skin later on. This is good, whole, natural food. And then also almond supplementation significantly reduced the appearance of pigment intensity by up to 20%. Of course, no significant changes were observed between the groups of skin hydration. So skin hydration was also assessed. However, no differences were observed between the two groups for that, or for the transepidermal water loss, which is water loss from the skin. Another study that was then funded in the area of skin health was looking at whether or not almonds could protect from UVB exposure. In this particular study, we actually studied Fitzpatrick skin types 2, 3, and 4. And as you can see on the Fitzpatrick skin type scale, these are the fair, medium, and olive skin types. And so 29 Asian American women, who generally you would see them cover up because they're trying to minimize the exposure to sun. So Asian American women ages 18 to 45 years were recruited into the study, and they completed this 12-week study. And they were provided with either 42.5 grams, which is an ounce and a half or a serving and a half of almonds daily, or about 50 grams of a pretzel snack. Again, this was something that the study was done in the US. So the reason for having a pretzel snack is really taking their regularly commonly consumed snack and substituting it with almonds. And so the snacks were calorie matched. So just very quickly touching upon, what is UVB? It's ultraviolet B light, and we do know that it has the largest effect on the top layer of skin. It causes redness, burning, and can also lead to skin cancer in severe cases. So in terms of study assessments, the primary endpoint that the study looked at was minimal erythema dose, which is really the amount of UVB radiation that will end up producing minimal erythema, which is sunburn or redness caused by the engorgement of capillaries in that area of skin. And so this is basically something that happens following exposure to the sun. And then the study also looked at inner arm minimal erythema dose, or MED, which was also determined as a primary outcome. So all assessments were completed by the same two independent certified clinicians and dermatologists. They do not consult with each other. They provide their own assessment of what the test is showing. In terms of some of the secondary assessments, the researchers looked at facial erythema. The clinician's erythema assessment was used to measure this type of erythema, and the table to the right actually provides you with the different scores and the assessment scale. Other secondary outcomes included allergan roughness, which is really talking about the coarseness of skin or cross-hatching, or elastosis. And I've provided here images of what cross-hatching looks like versus what elastosis looks like. And then, of course, other areas or other outcomes, secondary outcomes rather, that were assessed were melanin index, hydration, and sebum in facial skin. So looking at the results here, we can see that if we look at the assessments that were done around allergan roughness or erythema, the random score, we see that there really isn't any difference between the almond or the pretzel arms at baseline or week 12. So there was really no between group differences observed for these parameters. However, when we look for look at the primary outcome of the study, which is really looking at that minimal erythema dose or the damage done through sun exposure or by sun exposure, we see that there is, in fact, a significant difference. So if we're looking at the almond arm only, or the almond group only, baseline is denoted here by the yellow bar, and the end of the study, week 12, is denoted by the orange bar. And we can see that there is a significant protection that we can see coming through. The orange bar is higher at week 12 for almonds, and so that is indicating that almonds are providing significant protection from sun exposure, and the minimal erythema dose has to be much higher in order for the same amount of damage for the skin to happen to the skin. And the same thing about UVB exposure time, which is the chart underneath that. Again, you can see, whereas in the pretzel group, there's really no difference between baseline and week 12, just as in the case of minimal erythema dose, which is the chart above that. The UVB exposure time is significantly different in the almond group again, where much higher UVB exposure time is now required because of the protection provided by almonds in order to cause a similar kind of damage to skin as in the pretzel group. So very, very evident, extremely evident that almonds are providing great protection from UVB exposure. So study conclusions here would state that almond consumption actually improved UVB resistance in Asian female inner arm skin, as higher doses of UVB and longer exposure times were then required to induce erythema after 12 weeks of almond consumption compared to pretzel consumption. The study, however, did not show a change in other skin markers that were also assessed, which were allergan roughness, erythema, melanin index, sebum, or hydration. But very exciting results all the same. It's really unheard of for a whole food to be providing such amazing skin health benefits, and it was really great to see almonds do that for us. So another very interesting area, and the one that you saw on the timeline that we've really invested in for some time now, is the area of heart health. And so the area of heart health, because it's been around for so long within the almond research profile, it really has a timeline of its own. So as I told you earlier, 1995 is the year when ABC launched the nutrition research program. And then we funded quite a few studies that really looked at how almonds fit into providing heart health benefits. So by 2003, enough studies had been conducted. So you just basically want to look at the image below the arrow now, where it shows that by 2003, we had collected enough evidence where we were able to gather all that evidence and actually submit it to FDA with evidence from other nuts as well, to really request for a nut heart health claim that would be in the area of total cholesterol and LDL reduction. And in 2003, after studying all the evidence, FDA did provide a claim, a qualified health claim for nuts in the area of heart health. And then also so going back up above the arrow again, where we've looked at conducting systematic review and meta-analysis in almonds and heart health. And that provided crucial evidence that fed into some of the guidelines provided by USDA. So 2005, almonds were actually added to USDA My Pyramid. We have also then looked into doing almonds and cholesterol studies, where some of the milestone assessments that were done were looking at waist circumference, belly fat, and abdominal mass. Between 2003 and 2007, we also were part of the University of Toronto Portfolio Eating Plan. And this Portfolio Eating Plan actually indicated or demonstrated 30% cholesterol lowering. So this wasn't just almonds, but almonds were definitely part of the Portfolio Eating Plan. Then another milestone study that came along more recently was looking at almonds and vascular flow, as well as mental stress. And then again, looking at almond certification from American Heart Association, we actually got the heart check back in 2011. In 2017, according to the FDA, FDA's new definition of healthy, almonds were one of the only nuts to qualify for it. And by 2020, ABC had really funded almost 22 heart health projects with 40 published papers in the area. So here's the FDA approved heart health claim that was actually provided to us based on the strong body of evidence of almonds' benefits in helping to prevent a heart disease. And so in 2003, as I said, the FDA approved this claim that reads, scientific evidence suggests, but does not prove, that eating 1.5 ounces per day of most nuts, which is 1.5 ounces is really translating to 42.5 grams, most nuts such as almonds, as part of a diet low in saturated fat and cholesterol may reduce the risk of heart disease. So I'm not going to go over all the studies today because we obviously don't have that kind of time today. However, I do want to touch upon the milestone studies that I talked about during the heart health timeline that I went over. So this particular study is the Chris Etherton study from Penn State, which is looking at really how almonds might compare to a commonly consumed snack as part of a cholesterol-lowering dietary pattern. And so here the aim was to compare the effects of 42.5 grams or a serving and a half of almonds per day versus a muffin, which is again just a commonly consumed snack with the same number of calories. And so this study had 52 participants. These were all healthy adults with an average age of about 50 years, but they did have elevated LDL cholesterol levels and an average BMI that kind of put them in the overweight category. So this was a 2-period crossover study, which basically means that the participants were first randomized to one treatment and then crossed over to the other. So the diets were identical in both treatment periods, except for that daily snack, which was either the 42.5 grams of whole natural almonds or a banana muffin, which provided equivalent number of calories. So some of the outcome measures that the study looked at were the traditional lipid and lipoprotein measures, and these were low density lipoprotein, which is LDL, also known commonly as bad cholesterol. We also looked at triglycerides and the total cholesterol levels. And then I really love the little cartoon to the right that shows a little bit about what high density lipoprotein does in terms of its biology and function. So you see the LDL molecule in the red jumpsuit, and it's just coming by and dumping lipids into your artery, whereas HDL in the green jumpsuit is then doing the hard work of ensuring that all that lipid and cholesterol is actually taken away from the arteries to keep the arteries and the blood vessels healthy. So as part of the study, we also looked at HDL and of course looked at body mass as well as body composition. So in terms of the lipids itself, what we found is that the diet with almonds significantly improved traditional lipid and lipoprotein measures. So here, looking again at the chart, we're looking at almonds in the yellow bars and control in the orange bars. And so as we can see, as far as the total cholesterol is concerned to the very left of the chart, we can see a significantly higher reduction in total cholesterol, also in non-HDLC, or the bad fraction of cholesterol, LDLC, which is again representative of bad cholesterol. We see significant reduction in all of those, including a much lower increase in triglyceride in the almond arm of the study, or the almond treatment arm, as compared to control. Now, mind you, these are the same subjects. They're getting either almonds or the control treatment. They're just basically crossing over. So it's really one of those studies where the subject are their own control, and it doesn't get better than that. And what we see here is that there is absolutely no reduction in HDLC when it comes to almonds. We're actually looking at very little reduction in the almond arm. And HDLC is the good cholesterol. Remember now from the cartoon, it's actually the one that's taking away all the bad lipids from your arteries and vessels. And so the almonds are able to help maintain the good cholesterol levels while really bringing down some of the other bad cholesterol fractions. And that again is not very commonly heard for a whole food. So a very, very interesting and useful, beneficial outcome of almond consumption. So the other aspect of HDL biology and function is the way HDL molecule works is that it starts out as a very, very tiny, nascent, very small pre-beta HDL molecule when it starts to clean out the arteries. And as it goes along and picks up lipids, it's almost like a snowball effect where it grows larger and larger, eventually evolving into what's known as the alpha-1 HDL particle. So if we were to draw blood and find high levels of alpha-1 HDL particle, then that is actually indication that whatever diet we're having is actually helping HDL to pick up the lipids from the blood vessels and from circulation. And so having higher levels of alpha-1 HDL is actually a great thing. So as part of the study, as I told you, we looked at almonds and HDL as well. And what we found is that almond diet, compared to the control diet, significantly increased alpha-1 HDL. So again, indication that almonds are helping HDL do its cleaning job really well. So in summary, almonds, again at the 42.5 gram or a serving and a half, substituted in a low-fat diet for a calorie-matched muffin, really helped reduce the bad fractions of cholesterol, including total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and the non-HDL fractions. And at the same time, almonds maintained the favorable circulating HDL cholesterol. But what's even more remarkable is that they really increased the circulation of alpha-1 HDL particle concentrations, thereby indicating that almonds were helping HDL clean up. So another seminal study that was funded more recently, the one again that I again touched upon during the timeline slide, is the one that asked the question, does snacking on almonds influence cardiometabolic health? And so here the study design was a randomized controlled dietary intervention, and the study was called ADIS. These were actually parallel groups. So here it was not the same group of subjects that got crossed over to a different treatment arm, but rather it was two different groups altogether. And one group was provided with whole roasted almonds, and the other one was provided with lab created muffin snacks. So the reason to create these muffins in the lab was, or basically when we say lab, we're talking about the research kitchen, was to ensure that the muffins, yes, although they represent commonly consumed snacks, at the same time, the idea was to make sure that these muffins would not actually cause an adverse increase in cholesterol levels. And so that was a small little study that was done on the side once the muffins were made and then fed to the subjects. Then cholesterol levels and other triglycerides were actually assessed to ensure that the muffins weren't causing an increase. So really, these were muffins that were not impacting the health of the subjects in any way, and then whole roasted almonds were compared against this snack. So primary outcomes that the study looked at was vascular or endothelial function and liver fat. So when we're talking in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about the vascular function. The study population here consisted of men and women between the ages of 30 to 70 years who regularly consumed over 2 snack products per day, and they were at moderate risk for developing cardiovascular disease. So once the recruitment and screening of the study was done, as you can see in the image at the bottom, there was a run-in period, which is again considered like a washout period for 2 weeks, where the subjects just prep for the study. And then the intervention started again at 20% of the energy requirements, and the subjects stayed on this intervention for a period of 6 weeks. So as far as the LDL cholesterol lowering was concerned, again, similar to the earlier study, the almond arm, which is now in orange, and the control arm, which is now in yellow. So we see that the almond arms actually showing a significant reduction in the LDL levels. However, no effect on markers of body composition or glucose regulation were seen in this particular study, and these included measures of liver fat, pancreatic fat, body composition, insulin, glucose, total cholesterol, HDL-C, and adipokines. Now, one thing that we do need to understand is that this was a 6-week study. It could be long enough to be able to show differences in all of these parameters, but it was also just kind of teetering on the border there, where had we gone longer, perhaps we could have actually reached significant reduction in these parameters as well. So this is the slide I was referring to earlier, where we're going to talk a little bit about the vascular function, or what flow-mediated dilation assessment really does. And so here what we're looking at, or what we're trying to assess, is the ability of a blood vessel to expand and contract based on the needs of the body. So if the body is, if you're hot and you need to cool down, then your vessels generally expand, and it really increases the surface area, helps you to cool down. Whereas if you're cold, then your blood vessels constrict to keep that energy in, to keep the warmth in the body. And so the ability of these vessels to either dilate or contract is actually extremely important. The idea of heating or keeping warm or cooling down is just one aspect or one benefit of what the dilation and constriction of the vessels is useful for. There are several other reasons why this becomes important. And so this ability of the arteries or the vessels to be able to dilate and contract can actually be measured via what's called flow-mediated dilation. And essentially a cuff is put around the arm and tightens so that it really constricts the flow to the rest of the hand, which is the bottom part of your hand, to the fingers. And then basically a measurement is done to look at how much of the blood constriction is happening compared to when you were just before constriction actually took place. And then once the cuff is removed, the idea is to really anticipate that the blood vessel is now going to dilate to make up for all of that a restriction or the constriction that took place so that the blood can now rush into the body parts that are really starving for oxygen because we had the arm constricted for a while. And so in that case, we would expect the artery to really dilate, and that's figure 8 within this image. If you can see that the artery is much more dilated. And so that's the anticipated result from a constriction. And if you can measure that increased dilation, you know that your blood vessels are healthy. So now talking about the results in the chart to the right, we're really looking at the change in that flow-mediated dilation. And with the control snack, we see that we don't actually see that change. If anything, we're seeing a reduction in that change. However, with almond consumption, we're actually able to see an improvement in that change, which means that the arteries and the blood vessels are in fact able to constrict and dilate as they should be doing. And so that really shows us that almond consumption leads to healthy arteries and endothelial function. Similarly, heart rate variability is another measure of cardiac resilience. We might be going about our day doing our work, and then something happens that really causes a skip in our heartbeat. We might have avoided a fall, or something may have scared us, and suddenly we notice, or we may not notice, but there is a change in our heart rate. Now, the ability of our heart to be able to adapt to that change in heart rate is really heart rate variability, and you do want heart rate variability to be good so that your heart is able to put up with those variations. And so what we see in this particular study is that when this particular parameter was assessed during nighttime, the heart rate variability actually increased significantly following almonds, indicating improved cardiac health. So again, in this chart, you can see that with the control food, that variability actually decreased, whereas with almonds, it increased. And so we also saw this increase from baseline when we looked at high frequency power. So during nighttime, it was a low frequency power, and we looked at both low and high frequency and found that almonds actually made a difference towards the better. There was also another study very, very recently published, which is in 2021, which then took evidence from 27 almond randomized controlled trials. So these are 27 individual studies where almond health benefits, heart health benefits were compared to control diets. And a meta-analysis is really one of those highly tiered scientific evidence, because it provides a cumulative understanding of what various different studies are showing. It provides a very comprehensive understanding of what the almonds might be doing in the area of heart health, because now we're combining results from 27 studies. And so what this meta-analysis showed is that almonds significantly reduced triglycerides, total cholesterol panel, LDL-C, which is again that bad cholesterol fraction, while helping to maintain the good cholesterol levels. So really, not much more evidence is needed other than this meta-analysis that looked at 27 almond studies collectively, and really goes to show that almonds do indeed help with cardiac function, improving heart health. So then going to our next area of interest, which is looking at almonds and blood glucose. And if we think about it, heart health and blood glucose kind of go hand in hand, because it's really the overall cardiometabolic profile that fits in with these two areas. And so almonds have been studied to see whether or not they can have an impact on blood glucose regulation. And the reason to really look at blood glucose regulation is because we know that 537 million adults between the ages of 20 and 79 are now living with diabetes. The total number of people living with diabetes is actually projected to rise to 643 million by 2030, and then to 783 million by 2045. And more than 1 in 3 American adults have prediabetes, which is the condition that then basically sets you up to have type 2 diabetes. And of those prediabetes, more than 80% of the individuals don't really even know that they have it. So we realize and we understand that it's extremely important for us to look at this area and to see if almond intervention can in fact provide benefits. So several studies to date have shown that almonds do help reduce insulin resistance. And these studies have really been carried out in a really large and different subsets of populations. We're not talking about studies done only in the US. We're not talking about studies done only in UK or Europe. It's really in different populations across the world. In fact, studies have been done in India, which is considered, unfortunately, the diabetes capital of the world. So I'm going to be presenting results from one such study in India, which really is a hallmark study, because the study here looked at the effect of almond consumption on blood glucose regulation as well as cardiometabolic risk factors in adolescents and young Indian adults. And the reason to look at this age group here is because more and more this particular condition is afflicting the younger generation. And so we wanted to see whether or not, A, they would have prediabetes at such a young age, and if they did, whether or not almond intervention could in fact provide the benefit that they could benefit from. And so the study results showed us that prediabetes does in fact exist in subjects as young as 16 years old. And in fact, they're like that 80% of the population in the US that's walking around completely oblivious of the fact they're young, they think they're invincible, they have no idea that they are now afflicted with this disease and that they actually have prediabetes. So for that reason, this was a hallmark study. It really provided insight into the fact that there is a huge part of the population, much younger part of the population, that actually has prediabetes. It also demonstrated that daily almond consumption for 12 weeks actually helped to reduce hemoglobin A1C, LDL, and total cholesterol levels. So this was really the study design. And as I said, the results, including a morning snack, either of almonds, actually reduced total cholesterol and improved fasting blood sugar levels. Quickly jumping into almonds and weight management in the interest of time here now. We again go back to the Penn State study that was a rather seminal study for us as well, because it was the first one to look at waist circumference. So the study design remains the same, but we also looked at body mass and body composition, within which waist circumference and DEXA measures were looked at. And what this chart, although it looks very busy, the bottom line here is that the diet with almonds actually decreased abdominal fat as well as leg fat. And the study concluded that almond consumption has a beneficial impact on regional body composition, and decreased both abdominal and leg fat in a significant manner. Now, there's reason to believe why almonds might be able to help with weight management, with body composition, and that is because of the research that's been done on almond calories. So you and I, we all know that any food calories are really measured using Atwater factor. And what Atwater factor tells us is the amount of calories that a food contains is the amount of calories contained in the food. But I think what's even more important, and what this research shows from the USDA research shows, is that it's not always true that the amount of calories contained in a food are also the amount of calories that become available to the body. And the physical structure of a food really has a big part to play in that. Now, almonds, as we all know, are crunchy. They have this thick cell wall, they have the fibrous outer layer, the skin. And so there is a lot of interaction between these different layers of almonds that really help to reduce the amount of calories that are actually available for absorption. So in this almond calorie research done by USDA, you can clearly see that compared to the Atwater factor energy levels, which are indicated here by the dashed lines for each bar, we can see that for whole natural almonds, the amount of energy that's available to the body is actually 25% fewer calories. And the same is true, or similar reduction can be seen for roasted almonds, whole roasted almonds, chopped roasted almonds, not so much for butter, because there it has been mechanically ground and all of the calories and energy has been released from the food. Again, as Almond Board and as the nutrition research program for Almond Board believes, no study can be taken on its face value if it's only been done once. So we did fund another study, and the calorie results were indeed reproducible. And so it's really great to see that almond consumption actually does not provide as many calories as first believed. Almonds have also been known to provide satiety, as can be seen from this study at University of Leeds. Here, snacking on almonds was shown to help suppress between meal hunger and then lower overall hunger drive and suppress the unconscious desire, which is the implicit wanting to eat other high-fat foods. In terms of future research, I think it's really important to look at something that's weighing heavily on all of our minds because of COVID. We now understand that it's really important for us to have great immune strength. And so we're looking at the areas of immunity and almond consumption to see if almonds can really lend a hand in trying to strengthen that immune system. Another area that did surface because of COVID is concerns around mental well-being. COVID really helped bring to light the fact that there's a lot of anxiety and depression that came up as a result of this condition, or as a result of the situation where people were just stuck at home, not able to really socialize with others. And so is there a place for almonds to really help out in that area as well? And as we continue to conduct and fund more studies in the area of skin, there are aspects of skin health other than wrinkles and other than pigmentation intensity and other than UVB exposure that still need to be explored and expanded upon. And that's what we hope to do as we go forward with our research. So in conclusion, in terms of almond research, almonds fit into a variety of eating patterns, whether that be a keto diet, plant-based diet, vegetarian diet, all kinds of different dietary patterns, Mediterranean diet. And the recommended portion is 30 grams. So that's one serving. And typically in most of the studies, what we've seen is that having a serving and a half all the way up to 2 servings probably really help provide some of the benefits that I have taken you through today. Then almond supplementation also significantly reduces the appearance of wrinkle severity by 16% and pigmentation intensity by 20%, as seen in the skin health study. And that consumption also improved UVB resistance in Asian females. And then multiple studies have demonstrated that eating almonds results in significant reductions in total cholesterol, the bad cholesterol fractions such as LDL and triglycerides, while really helping to maintain the good cholesterol levels, or HDL, which typically your doctor will tell you can only happen if you were to exercise. And then snacking on almonds instead of a usual snack showed benefits for the novel heart health measures, which included heart rate variability, flow-mediated dilation, and that cleaning alpha-1 HDL particle. Almond consumption has beneficial impacts on regional body composition, as also seen through the same study, and it also showed decrease in both abdominal and leg fat. So snacking on almonds may also help suppress hunger between meals. So please stay tuned for new investigations about skin health, energy, immunity, and perhaps a little bit more. So with that, I'd like to hand it back over to Sophie. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you so much, Swati. That was so interesting. And just to remind everybody, we'd really welcome your questions. We've got one so far, and we've got some questions that have come in from people externally that we will answer as we go through as well. But please do put any questions that you have got in the box now, and we will come to them as soon as possible. So we've got 2 more poll questions for you just to round off the presentation. Can we start with that first one, please? So now that's just appeared in your chat box for you. So now we'd just like to review how you feel about the research now. So on a scale of 1 to 5 now, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, how would you rate your knowledge about almond studies now, having watched Swati's amazing presentation? Lovely. You'll be pleased to know, Swati, lots of people are saying they are 4 out of 5 now, so feeling much more confident, which is great news. Yeah, lots of increases. That's lovely. That's what we like to see. Just wait a little bit longer for a few more responses to come in. Lovely. Yeah. So 80% of people sitting at a 4 now, Swati, and 13% out of 5. So really, really good progress there in comparison to previously, which was 40% of people being at a 3 and then 20% at a 2. So yeah, really, really positive responses there. Thanks, everybody. So just moving on to the next poll. So what we'd like to know now is which research areas do you think the Almond Board should focus on in the future? And you can choose as many as you like. So this would be a really interesting one just to find out about what people think would be interesting areas for us to learn more about. I'll give you a little bit longer to have a think about these ones. Oh, we've got some good answers coming in now. Perfect. So lots of people interested in cardiovascular disease, lots of people interested in diabetes, immunity. That's great. If we keep those answers coming in, hopefully you guys will be helping to shape the future of almond research, which is really exciting. So let's move forward, and I think we are ready for the question and answer session. Lovely. So the first question we've got, Swati, for you is, I'm scrolling up to find it, now that we've done some more polls. Where has it crept in? Oh yes, we had a question from Carmen.